600,000 prisoners only leave from prison every year. And all we talk about is the recidivism rate, highlighting failures. But this is a new time now. It's time to celebrate. Time to admire. Time to honor those who got out of prison and never looked back. Doing something with themselves and their lives while giving back. This is the re-entry journey. I am your host, Portia Louder.
All right, man. Y'all know what time it is. I am back with the reentry journey. I am your host, Cardell Sims, and it feels good to come back with another episode. This person, I reached out to this person a while back to ask would they like to share their story with my class on the inside, with my reentry academy on the inside of prison. And this person gladly accepted and shared her story. My class just graduated a couple weeks ago, but one of the last speakers of the graduation said, I still remember what Miss Louder said. And that shows that, you know, when someone comes in and speaks to my class and they have impact, that shows the impact that you created. So without any further ado, I'd like to introduce our guest on the reentry journey for today, Miss Portia Louder. And the title of the episode is Living Louder. Thank you for coming on. I really do appreciate it. Go ahead and introduce yourself.
All right, Cardell, thank you so much for inviting me. My name is Portia Louder, and it was a total blessing to be able to go in and talk to your guys in the prison. My heart is there. My life changed so much when I got to prison, and I have a lot of love for that experience and the people that I met. So I will just share a little bit about me and my story. I live in Utah. I am the oldest of 7 children, and my parents were non-traditional. So we were a wild bunch. And, structure was not my thing. You know, the rules, boundaries, none of that was our thing. We were really creative, so we had a lot of fun, but it wasn't, I say that I grew up in prison because that was the first time in my life that there were really boundaries and structure, and I could kind of figure some of those things out. But I started probably in my teens, just really struggling first with relationships, not knowing who I was and what my worth was and what my future could even look like. And so by the time I was 17, I was a single mom and moved into a low-income apartment, started babysitting other kids that were also single parent homes. And I remember just really thinking that my problems were just picking the right person. Like if I could just find the right guy, everything would work out. And so I got into another relationship with someone that was older than me. So by the time I was 21 years old, I was a single mom again with 2 kids. And I remember, at that point in time, my dad moved from the little town that we were in, my parents. And so I moved up to the city. The big city in Utah is like Salt Lake City, And we lived out in the country. So it was a big change for me, but also it gave me kind of a new view. And
so was you going, even though you was living in the country, growing up, was you making your way into the city and getting any city life experience?
No, up until I moved up there as a single mom with 2 kids, I had never been to the city. I literally had never been out of that little town. I had never been on an airplane. So,
oh, wow.
Yeah. So my life was really that small town, and I didn't see a future for myself. I thought, I guess my future in my mind was just getting married and having kids. Like that was it for me, Not that that's a bad thing, but I wasn't doing a great job of picking the right guy because I really wasn't the right person at that point in time. It's
right.
Other than you are. And I was just fairly immature and inexperienced. And college seemed overwhelming. I wasn't good at high school. I had dropped out of high school And I got a GED just because I needed to get a GED to get welfare benefits. And that was really what my life was at that point. And so,
Oh, okay.
and when we moved to the city, or my parents did, and I moved up with my 2 kids, I got my first real job as a photographer. And it was because my uncle owned a photography business, a studio, and he took kids' pictures. And so he gave me a job, and I was good at it. And I remember, my confidence started to build. I could see that, there were about 6 employees at that little studio, and I was out of those 6. I mean, I ended up becoming the manager and just really working hard. And so I recognize now how important it is to have a good job. Like, it's such a confidence builder. And so, life was still not going great for me. I'm living with my parents. My kids are on Medicaid. I don't have a career, but I have a good job now. And again, I think to myself, well, if I can just find the right man, everything will come together for me.
So what was the thing to in you, or what was it about it that you kept feeling like you needed to find the right man? Like, what was that about?
And this is something I talk to women a lot about. I mean, most women, the first problem they have is relationships. Like, it is before the drugs. I mean, drugs come later. When women leave prison, they'll hit the halfway house and they get in a relationship and they'll head right back to prison, because it's just the emptiness inside. It's like not knowing who you are, thinking that somebody else is the answer to your problems, not realizing that it's within, it's inside of you. And I think as a woman, it's pretty common. The women that I met in prison, most of us really struggled with that codependency and not knowing who we were. And so I spent a lot of time on that when I was in prison. But some things, the next relationship I got in, for one, like, I get pregnant. I know some people don't. It's just like, oh, I'm in a relationship, I get pregnant again. I mean, does it even matter what I try to do to prevent that? And so when I got pregnant with my 3rd child as a single woman, I remember, and I think it was probably because I was a little bit older and because I had a job, I remember being scared. It was like, I'm not really taking care of the kids that I have now. And I need to really, like, I was scared. I prayed. Like, I wasn't a real religious girl or Christian or anything, but I was like, please help me figure this out. And so I said this prayer, and I felt this really amazing comfort. And I felt like it was the right thing to do to give the child up for adoption. Like, and I was strengthened to do that right out the gate, because I remember my mom saying, I'll raise him. And I said, Mom, no, like, this child deserves more. Like, it deserves a mother and a father. And my kids don't have that. And I want to do better,
Right.
So that was like the first selfless decision that I made. I chose to give David up for adoption. And the pregnancy was good. I mean, I found the family and they were very supportive of me. But as soon as I had David, I just felt so empty inside. I didn't get counseling. I didn't, I tried to just go back to work.
Right.
And they prescribed Percocet, and I just started using drugs like all the time, and when you do that, you lose your job and you kind of lose yourself. And my addiction progressed to where I was using street drugs. And I was about 26 years old, and I came home late one night. My parents were taking care of my kids, and my oldest son at the time, he's about 8 years old, and he had been standing by the window crying for me for hours. And my mom was there with him. And when I walked in, she just said, I don't know what it would take for you to change your life, but if this little boy isn't enough for you, as much as he loves you, then nothing ever could be. And yeah, so it was that night I walked downstairs, and I just got on the floor and I prayed and I begged God to take it from me. I'm like, I don't want to hurt these kids anymore. I'm tired of living like this. And my sweet son, he's like, Mom, why are you so sad? He pulls me over to the window and he's like, Mom, look how beautiful you are. Mom, and I was very determined at that point to change my life. And I went and talked to a therapist and asked for help. I went and asked people in the neighborhood that, were going to AA meetings that were in recovery. I'm like, I don't know how to do this. I need some help. and that was a life-changing experience. I got sober, and
Right.
it like things get when you get sober and change your life, like things got really good for me. It took a while. It wasn't easy. It was hard. What was so hard was the lifestyle, like, because I
Mm.
loved the lifestyle, the party lifestyle, the people, and so I walked away from all of that, and that was difficult. I went to AA meetings regularly, and the people in those meetings would, I didn't trust my own thinking because I had tried everything to fix my problems. And so I listened to what they told me. I remember one guy, I was like, I don't know how to get my life any, how to change. And he goes, well, you got to become a decent person. Like, you got to be nice. I'm like, oh, wow, why didn't I think of that? But so I started serving. I started changing, trying to make things right with my family, keeping my word, with my kids. It was a slow process, but when I remember the first time I took my son and went on a field trip with him with the school, the elementary school, and I was just like, wow,
Wow. Right.
wow, and I don't know if it's just like, it's like when you haven't been that mom and you are, it just feels so good. And you look around and you see other people and you think, do you know how amazing this is? Because, this is so special and tender. And I didn't look for another man, by the way. Like, I knew men were as big of a problem for me as drugs or anything else. But life really did get good. And I ended up meeting the man I'm married to now, which I don't know why he took a chance on me, because my poor husband, like Chad, had just graduated college. No, I think he'd had one girlfriend in his life. He didn't.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. You had too much going on for him when he.
He told me. I asked him, I said, what scared you the most about me when you met me? And he goes, everything. Everything. And I always say, how did I trick you into marrying me? When I went to prison, the girls would say, you don't drag guys like that through this kind of a life. What were you thinking?
Right.
Like, I don't know, what was he thinking? But it was neat because Chad could see something in me, like he could see who I could become. And he took a gamble on that, and our life got really good. I was so grateful for the simplicity of my life. We bought a house, we got married. He adopted my kids, both my kids, and I wasn't getting child support or anything, and became dad to them. And he had a job, and I started my own photography business, and life was going good for us. And I was grateful for that. I knew the difference. And so I just remember thinking, this is my dream come true life,
Right.
And my life got busy, which it's doing again now. So I have to really be careful about this, because I went from 20 weddings to 40 to 100 to 200 weddings a year, like boom, 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 boom. And then, like I do, I got pregnant, like I always do. People say, how many kids do you have? I'm like, 6. And they're like, what?
Baby time kicked in. Signed out another one.
Yeah, and I knew Chad and I would have a child together, but then I got pregnant right after the first one, which we didn't plan. I've only tried one time in my life to get pregnant. So, and that was with Jackson. And then we had Sadie 18 months later. And, I had a nanny. I had my crazy business. I had people, I was working from sunup to sundown and through the night, and employees. And then I started building a new home to accommodate the studio. And about that time, real estate just went boom. And I relapsed. On prescription drugs and didn't get honest with myself, because I was like, well, I'm not on the street. I'm not using street drugs. Like, I've got it together. I just need this to keep working harder, And then my integrity just flipped on me. Like, I first started buying and selling lots. And then, the thing about me is I like drugs, but I like to hustle. Like, I like to use drugs and I like to hustle. And I know this about myself now. Like, as soon as I start, it's a rush for me to do deals too. And so it's never enough. Like, it's never enough for me. I got to have more. And that's how it went. And I got involved in these illegal real estate deals, these flips where, you buy a house, you bump up the value, you sell it to somebody else, they pull the equity out, invest it in something else. It was kind of like a real estate Ponzi scheme. That's,
okay.
what it was. And then here's the worst part about it. Like, I'm in total denial. I'm lying to myself. The feds show up and I'm like, go talk to the banks. They're the bad guys. Like, they,
That's what you told the feds?
yeah. And then I
Oh,
go,
no.
we're talking to you. It's not going so well.
Yeah.
Because I had climbed out of some pretty rough situations. Like the way that I had powered through lots of hard things, I'm like, I am not going to prison. Like, first of all, who would I even be? Like, my husband's not going to stick around. I got kids. Financially, I've gotten us in this situation. Like, no, that's not happening.
Mhm.
Looking back, if I could have just said, okay, so this is what happened, and I could have owned it and just put it on the table and dealt with it. Like, this crap went on for years and years. Like 2005 is the deals they indicted me for. They didn't indict until 2011 because I literally hired lawyers and spent every dime we had to fight it. Then they indict, and I didn't go to prison till 2015. Like, we're talking 10 years.
Yeah, we talk about 10 years dealing with this.
Right. Big chunk of my life, and that was hard. It was hard on my kids, my husband. Boy, do I regret that,
Right.
So, yeah, by the time I walked into a federal courtroom, the devastation, the sorrow that I felt for what I had done. I've got my husband, my 5 kids. The son that I gave up for adoption wasn't in my life at that point. He is now, but at that point, so I've got my husband and my 5 kids back there. And I'm like, how could I have done this? Like,
Right.
That, I don't know about you. Have you done federal time? Have you been in?
Yeah, I did that. My last prison bill was federal.
Yeah. So I don't know about you, but when you're sitting in the courtroom and they say like the United States of America versus Portia Louder, and you're sitting there going, whoa.
Yeah, that's what did it to me. That's what made me ask myself, like, all right, you tired of doing it? It's got real.
Yeah. It's like you against your country, the whole big country,
Yeah, they handed me that indictment paper, and I really wasn't worried about the charges because I'm like, I don't face these drug charges, gang charges. I know.
Yeah.
But it was just something about seeing Cardell Sims versus the United States of America. I was like, oh, wait a minute. Yeah, it was just something about that. I'm like, oh, I'm like the United States. Hold on. It's like, yeah.
For real. What's interesting about that is that everyone I met in prison, I talked to some big homegirls that were like tough on the yard, but when we started talking about the courtroom experience, it was like, whoa. I talked to grown women that said that they curled up in their cell in a ball and sobbed after they were sent. Like, that feeling is the most lonely, devastating feeling that we all felt it. It was
this for me, just the whole proceeding of the federal court system anyway. I was so used to going in and out of state prison and doing state prison time and going to court every other week or every month in the state. And then when I got to the feds, I'm like, man, I've been fighting this case for 3 years. I ain't been in the court but twice.
Right.
And then I don't know what's going on.
It got real.
Yeah, it's got real. Then they talking about this points, and then I got to go down here, and I got to look over here, and your criminal history. I'm like, I'm dead. I'm like, man. I always tell people, I said, if I would have went to the federal prison system the first time I went to prison, I probably would have never went to prison again.
Yeah, it was, I remember it being so surreal. Like, I thought, who are they talking about? Who are they talking about? Like, Miss Louder, they're talking about me like I'm an enemy of the state. And it's like, they're going back and forth. And I'm thinking, that's not me. Like, I don't even know. It's just a shock. And I think that the combination of me having been in denial for so long, like trying to fight it in my head and not accepting it, and then walking in and all of a sudden it's so sterile and it just takes that denial away, like the reality of it, on top of the fact that you are the United States of America and I'm me, that just became, it was just a huge deal. And it shook me. And it honestly, from that day on, that was like a death for me. Like, that was the change in my life. I just stood up and I said, man, I am so sorry. I would just ask you to have some mercy on my family. Like, I know what you're going to do today and I probably deserve it, but, please show some mercy for my family. And in the end, the judge said, he sentenced me to the maximum, which was 84 months on my case, 0 to 7 years, and he gave me 7.
Mhm.
And my daughter was 7, So it was like, whoa, you just sent me away for as long as my kid's been alive. And then he said, take her into custody today. And that's not, that's a big one for white collar, because I thought I had 8 weeks to say goodbye. That's when I thought, I'm going to lose my mind. Like, I looked over at my lawyer and then I said, Your Honor, why would you want to do that today? Like, I'm thinking, don't do that. Don't do that to my kids today. Don't have the last thing they see be me being chained and shackled in this courtroom. And my husband stood up and he's like crying, he's having a hard time composing himself. And he's got my little girl and he hands her to my daughter. He's like, please give us time to say goodbye to her. She's going to need all the strength she can get to get through this. I'm like, whoa. Whoa. Like, he couldn't even say no. He wouldn't listen to the lawyers, but he gave me the 8 weeks. Like, he listened to Chad, which to me was like extremely humbling and tender to have someone that I had put through all that stand and advocate for me. Like, kind of, I guess I knew at that point that we were going to get through it. And, and I know that I'm blessed, because how many people have someone that will go through that with them,
Exactly, because a lot of times they're standing in there by themselves, even if they was in a relationship or married previous.
It's a very lonely place, right?
Yeah. I was blessed enough that I had family there during my sentence. My sentences was haywire. Just kind of like you, the lawyer was going back and forth with the lawyer and the DA was just going back and forth to the point where the judge, like, you know what, we had just set it for trial. And we talking about the feds.
Yeah.
No. When he said that's what I said. I said, hold on, no. I said, no, Judge. I come here. I don't know what they got going on. I'm taking my responsibility. I come to get sentenced today. I already been sitting inside of the federal county holdover where you don't get nothing for 3 years. I'm like, I already been sitting in the federal county holdover for 3 years. I'm ready to get some outside and everything else. I'm here to get sentenced. I don't know what they thought, but yeah, they was going back and forth, and the judge like, you know what?
Yeah,
I set up a trial, and I'm like,
my lawyer tried to take me to trial, and I'm like, it's not your life, brother. Like, you're not gonna go serve 20 years. No.
He said we just set up a trial. I said, no, I didn't say nothing the whole time. I just that's when I said, oh no, Judge, hold up. You playing my life now. I ain't going no trial. I already know I'm gonna lose, and then I ain't gonna never see outside. So I don't forget what they talking about. I was like, I ain't see my lawyer in 6 months. I don't know what he doing. I said, no, I can't come up out of here with a trial date. I gotta come out here with some time. Give me my time.
There you go. Oh, jeez.
The feds is a scary system.
Yeah.
And for you to have to dealing with prison time and stuff, to have to face that first.
Yeah.
Whew.
Yeah. No. Yeah, it was. I remember leaving the courthouse because I got that 8 weeks to say goodbye to my kids, and thinking, how could I have been so foolish? How could I have thought money mattered, man? Like, I've been sitting here trying to make money, and all that matters is the time I have with my family. And I sold it and I traded it for something so meaningless, for money. It was like, I remember driving my kid to school the next day and just crying and looking at him. He's like, are you okay? And I was like, how did I miss how beautiful this is? I mean, how could I have missed this? Because I was so busy hustling, I missed the beauty of life. And, I walked into prison. First time I've been to prison. So
right.
I walked into an FCI, 1,000 women all wearing khaki, and nobody said, hey, Portia, it's nice to see you. Nobody was happy to see me.
You didn't have no, I don't know how it is in the women, but in the men, when you come in, no matter where you go, when you go into like when I got the District Leavenworth, as soon as you walk in, and you got a spokesman for your car.
Right.
So you didn't have no spokesperson come pick you, say, hey, I see you got the, oh no. You just in there.
But people ask if I was scared. I'm like, I was devastated. What am I going to be, scared of. Like at this point, like I'm so devastated, the loss, the brokenness of leaving my kids and my husband and my community. I've failed them on this level. I'm gone for years. My identity just got smashed. I'm like, nah, I wasn't scared. I wasn't worried someone's going to hit me. No, I wasn't worried about that at all. I was so broken. I just laid in my cell, just broken, and I finally got the strength. I had a couple things happen. One, I walked over to the track finally and just had a conversation with myself. I was like, listen, Portia, you need to get it together. You got some time. You need to do something with your time. You have a family that loves you. There's people here that got nothing. You need to, this might be the most important thing you ever do. And people are looking at me like, what is that girl doing? I do not care. I got to get it together.
It's over there tripping.
She is tripping. But you know how prison is. They don't care. They're just
don't care. Yeah, just give them space.
And I was grateful for that because I was not okay and I needed to get it together. But you know what? I remembered the court made me go to a therapist because they thought I was in denial. I was, but they're like, you need to go talk to someone about, the possibility of going to prison. And I remember the therapist saying, it would be really hard if you went to prison, Portia, but at least in prison, you could become an amazing person. He said, out here, that's not the case because if you're addicted to drugs out here, you're disconnected from everyone you love. So, I think it would be worse to be out here and not be sober than it would be to be in prison and get sober. Of course, I wasn't listening to him. I wasn't trying to hear a word he had to say before I went to prison because I'm like, I am not going to prison. Then I get to prison and I'm walking around that track and I'm like, I could become an amazing person. Like I got options, like I can use this time and do something with it. And I went back to my cell and I said a prayer and I was like, God, I feel like nobody to anybody. I'm not a mother. I'm not a wife. I'm not in a relationship. Like everything that I've ever done, I can't do in here. I'm not a photographer. Nobody knows my name. I need to know who I am to you. And I felt this incredible amount of love, like love I've never experienced, the kind of love that would have, like I'm thinking, I never needed a man. Like, this is who I am. Like, I am so valued and loved. And I could see that I had an important purpose. And I could see that everyone else in prison was so valuable and that they had an important purpose. Now, that was the beginning of my sentence. And there were numerous times that it was so painful. I thought it was just going to break me. I mean, I just thought I can't do this anymore. Watching my kids grow up without me, so painful. But because I knew who I was and that I had something to fight for, I got through it. And I kept fighting to become that amazing person. You know, I made a list of goals and things that I could do. I read every good book. I got up early. I got myself on a schedule. It took me a couple of years, but I got to a place where I could see that I was 100% responsible for the choices that I made, that I was in prison because of my choices. And then I could see that I was fortunate, that I had been blessed, that my life had been beautiful, and that there were many in there who struggled. Their struggle was much greater, and that they were amazing people. And I started connecting and hearing people's stories, and it changed me for the better. And I would never undo my prison time because it gave me a completely different view of life that I love so much. I love the person I am. I love the way I see others and the connections that I make because of this experience. But it was so painful. And it taught me now, like, I know who I am. I don't need a man. I'm married and I love my husband, but I don't need a man.
Right.
It's not about, like, my identity isn't wrapped up in another person. It's just who I am, connected to God. Even with my kids, I'm like, I love my kids, but my life is mine. I have my own purpose on this earth. And, you know, I came home with integrity. I had rebuilt my integrity and found myself in prison. I came home with a passion for life and an excitement to share and freedom, real freedom. And where I don't care what anyone thinks anymore of me. It's all about who I am to myself. Like, I look in the mirror, I like who I see. That's what matters to me. And that's beautiful. And that's a big change from who I was before I went to prison.
So when you get out of prison, now you out of prison, you got this convict stigma You know, she's fresh out of prison. You know, even though it's not painted on our forehead, just the fact that we knowing this, you know, it kind of gives us some kind of fear. It kind of scares us a little bit. Was there any fears that you had when you was leaving out of prison once you got out on the outside?
Yeah, man, I did not expect to be so insecure. Like that blew my mind to get out and be so scared. Like I got to the halfway house and I looked around and I was like, I feel weird. Like, you know, I just sat there for like 2 days. I was like, I want to go back to prison. I am not okay. I remember this guy came up to me at the halfway house. He's like, are you okay? I said, no, I am not okay. He goes, you'll be all right. Because it takes a while, you know? And I was like, I'm never going to be okay again. I mean, after connecting with people, feeling safe, I knew how to do my life in prison. And then all of a sudden I'm out here and I'm in that halfway house. They want you to sign all those papers and do all that stuff. And,
you got to go through people. You got to go through too much just in the halfway house.
Yeah, so scary and hard. And then, like, I remember going back to work as a photographer. Well, first of all, I just wanted to go work at a homeless shelter. Like, I wanted to go work with. It was at like a farm where people lived and they worked the land and stuff out in the sun. I was like, I want to go. I told my caseworker, this is the job I want. She's like, She's like, you can make a lot more money than that. I was like, pissed off. I'm going, no, I don't care about money. You know, I found myself. I want to go work with people that I feel connected to. And she said, nah, you got to go work as a photographer. So they paid me double to go work as a photographer. So I get there and they knew who I was already, the people that, you know, were hiring me. And they're like, oh, we're so lucky to have her. I'm scared to death. I'm thinking, I don't even know how to work that camera or that computer. I've been gone for a minute. And when you're gone, technology changes. You know? Yeah. So I'm so scared. I'm like, ugh. And I remember my dad, you know, of course, I don't even have my driver's license or a car. So my dad's taking me to work.
Oh yeah, you got to get the ride.
oh, you got to know. So my dad takes me to work and then he picks me up after, my sweet old dad. And I said, I think I'm going to quit that job. It's not working out. He looks at me and he goes, are you scared? He goes, don't you dare quit that job because you're scared. He goes, don't you even think about it. He goes, now, if you want to quit that job because it's not the right job for you, he's like, but you know how to do this. He's like, you just need to put one foot in front of another. It's okay to say, could you show me how to do that? He's like, don't you dare quit because you're scared. Of course, my dad was the one that said, when I got sentenced, I'm not worried about you. You'll be fine. So my dad thinks I'm so tough, you know. I'm scared. Dad, you got this. Oh. So,
he probably looking at it like,
well, he was
up to that point, you've been through so much and got through it. You're going to be all right.
And I'm grateful for that because he didn't think, you know, my parents didn't feel sorry for me, which is good because I felt plenty sorry for myself. So I didn't need that, you know. I got so sick and tired of feeling sorry for myself by the end. I thought, I'm never going to do this again. Like, it's just, I'm so tired of, there's no empowerment in that, you know, there's no strength in that. Like, you got to find a place where you can just say, let's just move forward. Like this self-pity stuff, I just got sick of that in myself.
Yeah, that's it. You gotta move forward. Because ain't nobody else gonna be having no pity.
No. And you know, I think it was good for me. I started working as a photographer. I was scared. I went and got my driver's license. My dad bought me a beater old car. You know, it had a big bullet hole in it. Everyone loved it. Halfway house, they're like, that's a 44, man. Someone shot a hole through your car.
You had the bullet hole in the door. I don't know if it was in the door, but in the car.
It was in the door, yeah.
It was in the door. That's usually where they be at, in the door range for some reason.
Yeah, so you know, that was interesting. And you know, I went to work at a treatment center at night just to work grave shifts, and I loved that work. And I started writing my book, which was really cool because I had so much love in my heart for the women I met, and so was able to share some of those experiences. And then people asked me to talk about it, and I talk about it on social media, and I talk about it, you know, I public speak about it, and and I've gotten over that fear of what people think or any of that. Now, what I do know is that it's hard. It's hard to get out of prison. It's hard to get a job as a felon. I go speak at, HR workshops and anywhere I can to talk about the humanity of the people that I met, because the people I met in prison are hard workers. They're hard workers. And actually, because they've had to overcome so many difficulties, they're great employees, because they're like loyal and in it and willing to work hard when they get that second chance. So I'm like, I would hire so many of the people I met. They would be amazing employees. And so I talk about that. But I mean, what I've come to believe about reentry is this: get yourself right. Spend your time in prison getting yourself right. And the next step will show up for you. Like the next step. Because if you know how to deal with the adversity or the discouragement and you gain that resilience, you can handle somebody saying, I don't want to hire you. You can handle all of that and you can keep going because you know who you are and you've done the work. And so my suggestion is do the work. The rest of it will unveil itself for you when you get out here. Nobody's going to hand it to you. Just become the person that will attract those things when you get out. So,
right. That's great advice. So the book, I got 2 more questions. The book writing process, just that whole process, what was that like?
It was like going through the whole thing again for me, because so I was blogging from prison, so I had a lot of content. I had been in journals and stuff, and I had worked really hard to become a better writer. And I had also, I'm a reader. I've been a reader my whole life. So, but I was intimidated. I had a lot to learn. I found editors and people to help me with it, people to read it. And it was exciting. I mean, it's so exciting, to publish your book. And I'm getting ready to write another one. I mean, I love it. I love to be able to connect that way,
Right.
But boy, when I first got out, people said, you should write a book. And I thought, are you kidding me? Like, that's way too scary, because I want to write a good book. Like, I don't know how to, it was a learning curve, but it was also exhausting emotionally, because I had to go back through, and it was like, I made this outline and I could start to see how it was going to come together, but I still had to walk through it all, like reliving those memories. I have letters in there that my kids wrote, just all that stuff. It's emotionally exhausting. So.
Yeah, but it's a great accomplishment as well, to be able to take your journey and everything that you've been through, and then be able to put it in the book, and be able to share it amongst others, because you got the book inside of prisons, right? That's I mean, that's
so exciting.
That's the biggest thing. So talk about that for a little bit.
Yeah. So I've been really fortunate, because I just had people reach out, met people from all over. Right now, the book is available through Securus and also Adobo. So it goes on all the tablets in prisons, but that's state prison, Hopefully the feds will be getting tablets in the next year or two. But I send them in.
You never know with the feds. They might not get no tablets to 2030.
Yeah, I know. And I mean, I send them in to people, and I mean, it's also available on an audio version, and that's available for people that are in state prison as well. But yeah, I send them out all the time to people that are in prison. It's just tricky, because with the feds, one institution will say, yeah, send them in, and another one will send them back. And, it's just, you don't know. But you know the deal.
That's how it goes. Just never know with the feds. Like you said, one will say one, and the other one say no, and you be like, what? Why not? It's just the same. So what? Well, I said I had 2 more questions, but I got one more. Then I got another one that I asked.
You're fine.
Because I really want to know what's next for you. What did you see? What's next for you?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I have this passion, Now I'm looking more at sharing other people's stories. Like, I've been talking to people and doing videos of other people. I do a lot on Facebook, and I'm an admin of a 500,000 group. I'm a 500,000 member group on Facebook. So I've been able to connect with people all over the world, literally all over the world. Like, I've done podcast interviews, and I've done other, connections with people from Australia, from London. I'm doing another one from Australia. I mean, I get to connect. So I love that part. I'm going into prisons on a regular basis. I'm going back to Idaho next week, and I'll be speaking at the women's prison. I spoke to the men up there recently.
I seen you. I'm glad you said it because I seen you connected with my boy Travis.
Yeah,
he does some great things in Idaho. He actually got me on the inside of the prison to give one interview on the podcast. One of the guys on the inside.
that's right. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, Travis and I are good friends. I love Travis. He helped me with some things as well, and we just worked together. So that's cool. And yeah, just I'm working any opportunity I get to share. I also go speak at retreats to normal people about prison, people that have never experienced this, because I want to connect them to the humanity of people who are in prison, you know?
Right.
So just every opportunity that comes, I jump in. I mean, I also work for 2 different mental health facilities, and I do marketing for them. So my life is busy, and I have kids and grandkids now, you know? So they're a little older, but I try to, I mean, I keep my word and I show up in their lives on a regular basis too. So
yeah, it's different now. You know, you're older, you ain't doing everything like you used to. Life's on track, and so now you really like with me, I really get to see what life is really all about. Because when you said grandchildren, now I got grandchildren. I'm like, I done spent most of my children's life in and out of prison, so now it's like, oh, I got the grandchildren and get to enjoy this phase of life and stuff like that. So that's really exciting. So I asked this one question to everyone. It's always the last questions I ask on the podcast, and that is, first of all, before I ask this question, anybody want to purchase? How can they get in contact with you? Purchase the book or book you to speak or anything? How do they go about getting in contact with you?
Well, I have a website. It's portialouder.com. I'm also really active on Facebook, which is just Portia Louder Story or Portia Wilcox Louder. If you look up Portia Louder, you're going to find me. You can Google me, you're going to find me. You can contact me that way.
Yeah, Google. Yeah, that's it.
Just Google, you know, and then also even in my book, I have an email. Like I just got emailed from someone that, you know, is in prison, that they'll reach out through core links or whatever. So I'm always willing to respond and try to support people. I send letters to people all over the country who are incarcerated. So if they have a family member, someone struggling, let me know and I'll reach out, because that keeps me connected to the people I love, you know?
Right.
Yeah.
All right. So if you have one word to describe your journey, this journey that you're on, what would that one word be and why?
Oh, the one word would be compassion. And I think because I have been shown so much compassion by the people in prison, and as I got to know them, it really brought that word to light for me. Like I came to understand what it really means to recognize somebody else's strength, to love them, to empathize with them. I got to a place at the end of my sentence where I could see that I was the guiltiest person in there, because my life had, you know, so many of the people that I was close to had been through much harder experiences than me. And I thought, I made all these choices, and my parents weren't addicted to drugs. My parents gave me a good upbringing, and I still chose the path that I did and ended up in prison. And so, but in that same, you know, compassion, I have compassion for myself as a young girl, not knowing her worth. And even, you know, the hard one for me now is that I know a lot of privileged people, you know, I would call, that don't, and it's harder for me to have compassion for them if they can't see the value. Like if they see people in prison as bad people, I'm like, oh, you don't get it, you know?
Right.
I'm offended by myself, who I used to be and the way I used to see the world. You know, so I'm like, how could you see it like that? But I do know that how they could, because so did I. So at this point, I just have compassion for those who are working so hard to change their lives. I have compassion for myself, and I'm working on compassion for people that are maybe privileged and haven't yet experienced these things. So yeah, that would be my word.
There it is, the word. The one word is compassion. Portia, thank you for coming on the reentry journey and being a guest and sharing your story with us. I wish you nothing but success. I see nothing but more and more success for you. And, you know, just want to thank you for all the work that you've done, that you're doing, and that you will continue to do. And anytime, if I can help you out or you need anything, you want to come back into the next class and share your story. Always feel free to reach out. I'm always open to help out, connect in anything I can do in any way to help keep moving forward in this reentry journey and helping those that's getting out of prison and those on the inside, preparing them as well. So feel free to reach out. And once again, thank you for being a guest. Those of you tuning in and will tune in, make sure you go get the book, Living Louder, Portia's book. Make sure you go get it and make sure you reach out to her. If you another person in the reentry field, reach out to her. And I'm pretty sure it'd be well worth you reaching out to her. Portia, thanks again for being a guest. I really appreciate it.
Thanks, Cardell. Take care.
All right, you too.
$600,000 prisoners are released from prison every year. And all we're talking about is the recidivism rate, highlighting failures. But this is a new time now. It's time to celebrate. Time to admire. Time to honor those who got out of prison and never looked back. Doing something with themselves and their lives.